a journalist, and a judge all at the same time. One would think that something like this should be happening behind the closed doors of FBI headquarters. But in this case, everything was out in the open, and the entire world was seemingly involved. Despite strict rules, there were still people who made stereotypic remarks in the guise of opinion, and many who were openly racist, adding to the paranoia with their strange theories. When Supernova Sky, the original poster, or OP for short, of the Boston Marathon's live thread #1, saw the Find Boston Bombers subreddit going viral, he tried his best to make sure his original thread remained separate. In his words, there was nothing new in that subreddit. People kept analyzing existing information. And it was this very analysis that soon led to a whirlwind of false information. The official investigators continued to urge the public to share any lead with them, but this encouraged Reddit sleuths to dig even deeper. If the culprits were still not identified, it meant that they needed to do more. They weren't going to wait for the FBI or major news to share actual images of suspects first. According to them, hundreds of people with access to public media resources would be more efficient than a bunch of specialized investigators. Now, Reddit had over 14 million monthly visitors at the time, so any picture, video, or post that gained traction on the website received similar attention as being printed on the front page of the New York Times newspaper. Twitter users with large followings would take updates from Reddit and share them on their account. From there, news channels would often pick up the information and spread it further. Several media platforms began forwarding the popular theories circulating on Reddit. It ranged from a dynamic duo of white hat guy and blue shirt guy to torn jeans guy. As theories spiraled out of control, people began questioning what the moderators of Find Boston Bombers thought about them all. In an interview with Vice, Chris Reeves, one of the moderators of Find Boston Bombers, shared his remarks on the more popular ideas. "What do you think of Rad's 13-man theory?" asked the interviewer. "I was actually about to comment on that before you called. We need to be careful about jumping to conclusions. His theory shows that he's clearly suspicious of Arab people. Personally, I wouldn't want to see any Arab Americans being singled out just because people jump to conclusions," Chris replied. "What's the story with the blue-robed man?" came the next question. "There's blue-robed man, white hat black jacket guy, blue duffel bag guy, both in the photo below, green hat guy, and a bunch of others. Personally, I think blue-robed man could just be a guy with bad fashion sense trying to walk through a crowd. For the most part, a lot of these people just look like regular guys hanging out. But you never know," Chris shrugged. And finally, they asked, "I saw your post about this guy. It seems like anyone with a backpack is a suspect. Is that right?" To which he replied, "Well, it certainly doesn't hurt to be looking at people wearing backpacks around the time of the blast." And as if they hadn't done enough damage, New York Post made another unverified publication. The white hat guy and blue shirt guy were put in a poster with "Bagmen. Feds seek these two pictured at Boston Marathon" written all over it. It was 16-year-old Salahuddin Baroum and 24-year-old Yassine Zami. And after being harassed by the people who believed the New York Post's article, the two went straight to the police station in attempts to clear their names. Law enforcement soon assured the public that they had never been considered suspects, and both innocent men later sued New York Post for putting them as a target for scorn, hatred, ridicule, or contempt. And just like this, more and more people fell prey to the ruthless cycle of the media promoting unverified news for the sake of updates. And people blamed Reddit for every misidentification. Rather than have reputable media outlets take their fair share of the blame, it was easier to just put all of the blame on a platform where users had nearly complete anonymity for what they said or shared. Meanwhile, as Redditors were occupied combing through pictures and footage, Jeffrey Bauman, a runner who had lost both of his legs in the blast and now lay barely conscious at the Boston Medical Center, revealed a tip that narrowed down the investigation 1,000-fold. Since the attack, authorities had been collecting samples of evidence from be it bloody clothing, fragments of torn backpacks, pieces of shrapnel, and so on. But they still had no direction towards a sure lead that could help identify the bombers. That was until Bowman gained enough strength to be able to scribble out a message. "Bag. Saw the guy. Looked right at me." As soon as they received his message, FBI agents rushed to his bedside. Bauman described a man in sunglasses and a black cap who calmly placed a backpack by his feet, then vanished into the crowd. That's it. That was the key lead. He gave the FBI the right direction to narrow down their chase, but now they had to skim through 33 terabytes of digital data submitted by the public and find an angle that showed the guy placing a bag near Bauman. Time was running out. The longer the culprits remained at large, the higher the risk of them initiating another attack. Finally, amidst the sea of footage, a young man wearing a black baseball cap like Bauman described, accompanied by another wearing a white cap, began to appear frequently. Their calculated moves and how they didn't flinch or run after the blast made them stand out in the chaos. Eventually, the FBI believed they had their culprits. But now they had to decide what to do with their information, keep it to themselves or share it with the public. On one hand, the risk with releasing the suspects' information was that it would inevitably inform the suspects themselves that the FBI was onto them. This could cause the men to panic and do something drastic. But on the other hand, all of the public speculation added pressure on the authorities to publicly identify the actual criminals and stop the misidentification of innocent people. The New York Post's careless publication of the Bagmen was the tipping point. The FBI knew they couldn't stay silent any longer. The internet and traditional media were turning the manhunt into a circus. By showing the public exactly who to look for, the FBI aimed to shut down the noise. President Obama was shown photos of the two suspects, and while he didn't block the release, he offered one simple warning. Be sure they're the right ones. On Thursday, April 18th, at exactly 5 p.m., the FBI released photos of their two suspects in a press conference. Suspect 1 was a man with a black cap, and Suspect 2 was a man with a backward white cap. Once again, the authorities encouraged the public to help identify these suspects. But this time, it wasn't just a call for the public's assistance. It was a strategic move to regain control of the narrative. For the first time since 9/11, there was a record-setting web traffic jam at the FBI.gov website after the photos of the two suspects were released. News channels like CBS further fanned the flames with headlines such as, "The FBI says the suspects will be caught by the public's help, and the public's on it." But when helping the police catch the culprits turns into a competition of who will identify the suspect first, facts can go unchecked. Just saw this on one of the threads for 4chan. Guy running on left looks pretty closely like Suspect 2. But some Redditors pointed out that in the previous 2 days of analyzing countless pictures and videos, they had never once circled the actual suspects that the FBI ended up releasing. I've been browsing this and /Boston threads all week, and no, most were random, mostly ethnic people with bags. There wasn't one post about the real suspects. And also having seen most of the albums and photos, they don't seem to have been caught in any of them. Yep, never saw either on this subreddit, not once. This obviously made some question just how much assistance they could provide to this case. But others were undeterred and continued to obsess over every detail. One of the big ones being the hats that both culprits were wearing. They were of the idea that if they could narrow down the exact shop where the two bombers had bought those hats, they could get more intel on them. I haven't seen Reddit this obsessed with hats since the TF2 update. Guys, we have the hats! Is there a store that sells both hats or sold both hats recently? Maybe those guys went out shopping together to create costumes to make them less suspicious or something. Ask FBI to check sports shops. How many shops are in Boston? But a few users eventually got fed up with the redundancy of Redditors' investigative efforts. I'm all for people doing their own investigation, but some here seem to think that the FBI and all the professionals investigating this case are somehow giant morons who wouldn't think of basic investigation shit like identifying hats, clothing, backpack brands, checking local stores for the clothes, equipment purchases, and so on. I've seen people saying they want to crack the case before the FBI while looking at a bunch of photos and circling guys with backpacks. Lol, that's gone well so far. The FBI came up with these suspects on their own, with no help from Reddit. After accessories, people began obsessing with the characteristics of the two suspects, such as their height and weight. Eventually, the idea of the culprits being 6 feet tall and weighing 130 pounds began circulating the sub after some users had apparently used the suspects' images to estimate their height and weight. Now, although our fine Boston Bombers mods had implemented strict rules of not naming anyone, it was an impossible task for 5 mods to scrutinize hundreds of posts and comments per minute. So in that frenzy, a user named Bobby Nixon shared a name that somehow slipped through the cracks. Have you considered Sunil Tripathi as a suspect? He is 6 feet tall and went missing from the Boston area. And this was the seed that grew into one of the biggest witch hunts in the history of the internet. There is now a comment floating around about a missing school student who users believed shared a resemblance of the suspect. Sunil Tripathi, a 22-year-old Brown University philosophy major, was the kind of guy who'd stay after class to debate ideas or help you prep for a final, even if he barely knew you. Smart, kind, reserved. The type of kid you'd never expect to vanish without a trace. But that's exactly what he did. On March 16, 2013, just a month before the Boston bombing, Sunil disappeared. He even left his wallet, ID, and cell phone behind. His family and friends were shocked by the student's sudden disappearance and tried everything they could to find him. They distributed flyers throughout Providence, Rhode Island, focusing on areas Sunil frequented. The search eventually expanded to neighboring states, including Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, and Pennsylvania, with the community's support in spreading awareness. Sunil's family and friends even took to social media and made a Facebook page with the name Help Us Find Sunil Tripathi. On that page, there were dozens of video messages from loved ones telling Sunil that they love him and wish for him to come back. But despite their relentless effort, Sunil didn't show up. The family wouldn't stop trying no matter what, but their innocent efforts soon faced a harsh backlash. When Redditors heard the name Sunil Tripathi and then looked back at the FBI suspect, white cap, strong jawline, similar build, something clicked. A missing Ivy League student with no trace for a month just happens to resemble one of the bombing suspects. Couldn't be a coincidence. They were convinced they had just found their match. After the Reddit comment dropped Sunil's name, it spread quietly and quickly like a drop of ink in a glass of water. At first, it remained isolated to the subreddit. But then in came Twitter. Thursday night, a user named Cami Mattioli tweeted something that sent chills down a lot of spines. I'm more than a little freaked out by the photos of suspect number 2. A few minutes later, she followed up on the same tweet thread. Yeah, he's from my hometown. We went to high school together. The person who used to go to her school, Sunil Tripathi. Kami later deleted the tweet, probably sensing the fire she'd just started. But it was too late. Redditors had already caught it and began sharing the tweet in r/Find Boston Bombers subreddit as further proof that they were onto something. And finally, the megaphone moment. A woman named Sasha Stone, who mostly wrote about actors and red carpets on her film blog Awards Daily, was someone you'd never expect to get involved in a manhunt. But that night, she saw the internet chatter and how people were sharing the side profile of the bomber suspect and Sunil Tripathi. Sasha was blown away by the diligent investigative efforts of Reddit sleuths and went on to share their findings with their 10,000 Twitter followers. Looks like someone put it together. She didn't just share the comparison image, she dug deeper and also found the Facebook page Sunil's family had set up a month ago and posted that too. In a matter of minutes, thousands of people who had previously never heard of Sunil now knew his name, his face, and the faces of his already worried family. The Facebook page, meant to gather help to find a missing boy, was now filled with a frenzy of questions and accusations, eventually causing the family to take it down. On Sasha's post, people congratulated her in the comments section for solving the case, but even Sasha knew that she wasn't the first one to come up with this theory. It was Reddit. Thousands of internet sleuths searching for the Boston bombers now had their eyes locked on one name, Sunil Tripathi. Tensions in the city were already on edge, but what happened next pretty much threw things off the cliff. It was Thursday night around 10:45 p.m. when reports started coming in. Shots fired at MIT. 2 men had gunned down an MIT police officer, Sean Collar, while he was in his cruiser. Officer down. Ambulance transferred injured officer. All units retreating, going to safe perimeter. They stole his service weapon, hijacked a black Mercedes SUV, and vanished into the night with $800 of stolen cash. I think I heard they stole a state police SUV. Sean Collar later died in the hospital. Cops were quick to follow the terrorists in a chase tracking the GPS of the stolen car, only to lose them when homemade bombs came flying from the moving car's trunk. Between the houses, they have explosives, some type of grenades, shots fired. The scariest before was hearing the fear in the officer's voice as he was screaming, "Shots fired! Shots fired! Holy sh*! Explosions! They have explosive like some kind of grenade!" The authorities held a short press conference in the parking lot of a mall in Watertown to share updates on the shooting. The suspects had driven deep into Watertown to avoid the police, but they could only run so far. Then, a chilling tweet came like a verifying stamp on anyone who questioned the actual identity of the bombers. A user named Greg Hughes tweeted, "BPD scanner has identified names. Suspect 1, Mike Mulugeta. Suspect 2, Sunil Tripathi." It was a blatant claim, so when a concerned user commented asking the source of the tweet, Greg mentioned it to be from Reddit's r/Find Boston Bombers subreddit. Wow, the second suspect they are saying is the missing Brown student. Not many questioned the credibility of that tweet because the words police scanner added just enough weight to lower people's doubts and hit retweet. And that's exactly what they did. For the past 4 days, internet sleuths have been scrutinizing every face and every bag in the bombing footage to determine the actual identity of the terrorist. They needed names, and now they had them. Mods on r/FindBostonBombers watched the thread spiral out of control. Every time someone mentioned Sunil's name, they delete it. No warning, no second chances. Straight ban. Any post about the missing guy will be deleted by mods. They weren't trying to hide the truth. They were trying to contain the chaos. But then, when the r/FindBostonBombers mods saw that thousands of people were retweeting the alleged police scanner update, including local TV journalist Kevin Galliford and BuzzFeed reporter Andrew Kaczynski, they took it as a news source. Wow, Reddit was right about the missing Brown student per the police scanner, suspect identified as Sunil Tripathi. And just like that, they stopped banning or deleting comments with Sunil's name. Within minutes, high-profile Twitter accounts with massive followings, Perez Hilton, Luke Russert, Bill Neely, and many others spread the information like wildfire. Once again, everyone wanted to be the first to update, and in that race, no one bothered to check the source and facts. Before anyone could verify, the tweet had already reached global news. The world no longer saw Sunil as a mere suspect. They had already declared him guilty. The internet rejoiced in having identified the real identity of the terrorist before law enforcement. Posts like, "Reddit solved it?" before FBI circulated around the internet. People commended Reddit for its incredible devotion and intuition. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of Rhode Island, the Tripathi family was not only bearing the pain of the disappearance of their son, but now on top of that, the millions of threats and accusations rolling in against him by the second. They watched in horror as their son's name, photo, and Facebook page were being broadcast across the internet as America's Most Wanted. They couldn't wrap their head around the fact that the calm and shy Sunil could ever be involved in something so cruel. That night, it didn't look like any further investigation was needed. The internet had already made up its mind, and the truth was in front of everyone. That was until NBC News stepped in and suddenly crashed the party. They issued a statement flat out denying that the suspects being named online were involved in the bombing. Law enforcement sources are adamantly saying White Hat Guy is not Sunil Tripathi, per reporters on NBC. But the damage was already done. People just assumed that NBC News was trying to hide the truth and defuse the situation. Meanwhile, the reality was something no one had expected. By Friday morning, the hunt for the two suspects was still on. Helicopters were slicing through Boston's gray skies. SWAT teams patrolled eerily quiet neighborhoods in search of the getaways. And across America, millions sat glued to their screens, refreshing social media pages and tuning in to the police's scanner. 27,000 people listening. Man, this is never gonna load. Light-skinned white male, gray hoodie, black curly hair, possibly with an assault rifle and explosives, should be considered armed and dangerous. Around midday, clarity finally and officially broke through the noise. RT News reported that the suspects were brothers, Tamerlan and Johar Tsarnaev, Russian Caucasians from Chechnya. No Sunil, no Mike Mulugeta. Internet sleuths suddenly went awfully quiet, trying to process what had just happened. But this is the moment when Reddit stopped looking like a task force of amateur detectives and started to feel like a crime scene itself. I'll have to give it to CNN, and to think we were all pissing ourselves over how much faster we were. I'm embarrassed, really. Unreal. So many links linking Sunil Tripathi. Just goes to show. Threads filled with a mix of guilt, denial, and confusion. Some users were quick to accept their part in impulsively circulating unverified information. I think what Reddit needs to do is leave the Tripathi family alone. Seriously, people, just leave them alone. Enough damage has been done. Every person involved in what happened has to get the off the internet for a while and seriously consider what they've done to an innocent family. And for what? This subreddit did nothing to aid in the investigation. The media threw up their hands with indignation when questioned on the part they played in the blatant spread of false information, and just like every other time, they put all the blame on Reddit. Seeing the global backlash that Reddit and especially the subreddit r/FindBostonBombers was facing, its founder, Oops777, posted in defense. Just a reminder, we did not allow any information on the missing person. It came from our Boston, our news, and Twitter. We did not know of the pictures spread around the media of the blue jacket guy. They were from another source. Stop blaming this subreddit for everything to do with incorrect info. He further highlighted other news channels and subreddits responsible for spreading misinformation. NY Post posted images of the blue jacket guy that had never been seen before on Reddit or 4chan. They reported that they were released by a police office or government official. We deleted all mention of them a full 12 hours before the pictures hit the front page of the newspapers. The missing person was speculated about on Our News, Our Boston, and 4chan. Even before the scanners mentioned him, we removed any posts of him immediately. When he was mentioned on the scanners, it was tweeted by @Newsbreaker and went viral. It was mentioned on Our Boston, not this subreddit, as people seem to think. You can argue about whether you like this subreddit all you want, and maybe you have some points in other areas, but these are the facts. So please stop pinning things on this subreddit that came from Reddit as a whole, Twitter, and or the media. We were deleting these posts despite being heavily criticized at the time for censoring facts when the police scanners released those names. The whole of Reddit and Twitter believed it. When it's deemed incorrect, everyone turned on this subreddit. Some people called the founder out for denying complete accountability, while some showed remorse for what they had been a part of. Don't take the attacks personally, but there were definitely threads about Sunil in here. And though you mods have tried your best to keep on top of things, you haven't had perfect coverage. This subreddit is, of course, just one point in the chain of misinformation, but that doesn't fully excuse it. That said, some of anti-Reddit stuff in the mainstream media is a bit heavy-handed. But, well, finger-pointing with poor fact-checking seems to be rather the norm in media old and new. Well said, it is hard to write a story attacking the internet, but it is easier to attack Reddit. This subreddit was a failure. We didn't find photos of the bomber. We didn't identify the bombers after photos were given to us. Rather, we did ruin several innocent people's lives. We did torment Sunil T's family during such a difficult time. We did find out what kind of hats they were wearing. Meanwhile, the hunt for the real culprits intensified as the bombers drove through Watertown and engaged in a fierce shootout with law enforcement. Everybody behind cover until clear. Cop says suspects were definitely firing long guns, not handguns. Dude must be low on ammo now and has local and state cops, feds, and perhaps other forces on his trail. I'd wager he doesn't have much chance of escape. One in custody and one held at gunpoint. At this point, Johar had jumped into a stolen SUV, determined to escape, as officers tried arresting his brother, Tamerlan, by pinning him to the ground. Johar slammed the accelerator to the floor, straight toward them. He didn't slow down. He didn't swerve. And in that blind panic, he ran over his own brother. The SUV crushed Tamerlan's body and dragged him nearly 30 feet, tearing across the pavement as officers dove out of the way. But he didn't pause and contemplate what he had just done. Johar simply kept driving, trying to get as far away from the authorities as possible. Half a mile later, he ditched the SUV and vanished into the night on foot. Police on scanners said the SUV was abandoned. He was asking the helicopter to light up where the SUV was abandoned. One suspect going to Beth Israel. Tamerlan was later pronounced dead at the Beth Israel Medical Center, killed by his own brother. I've been listening the entire time. These guys attacked cops with hand grenades and automatic weapons and had explosives. They got one suspect and one is on the loose and is a Middle Eastern looking male, 2 officers down. With Johar still at large, authorities imposed a lockdown on Boston, urging residents to stay indoors. A 20-block perimeter was established in Watertown, with officers searching each house and backyard. The normally bustling streets were eerily silent as the manhunt expanded. It was as if the country was under martial law. People kept sharing their thoughts and updates on Reddit. This is like having 5 stars in GTA in real life. This kid has an entire army searching for him. How he has evaded capture is blowing my mind. As evening approached, the lockdown was lifted and residents began to cautiously step outside. No one knew where Johar could be hiding or if/when he would strike again. Then, suddenly, a call came from a man named David Henneberry. He was a homeowner in Watertown and had noticed that his shed's door was open. The tarp covering his boat was out of place, and there was blood on the tarp. When he lifted it, he was shocked to find the wounded Johar Tsarnaev inside. David immediately alerted the authorities. A police helicopter equipped with thermal imaging confirmed movement within the boat. Officers surrounded the area, and after a tense standoff, Johar was apprehended and taken into custody. Later, all the tireless effort of FBI's unsung heroes was unveiled. While the internet was busy accusing the wrong people and feeding conspiracy fires, official investigators worked to find the truth based on real evidence. The FBI, alongside the Boston Police, Massachusetts State Police, and ATF, had locked down 12 square blocks near the bombing site. For 9 straight days, they combed over every inch, and the evidence they found, it was massive. Over 3,500 pieces, from shards of backpacks to remnants of fireworks, were processed. 2,749 items were shipped to Quantico for deeper forensic analysis. Thanks to the special digital tip line set by the FBI, Everyday people, bystanders, store owners, tourists, submitted everything they had. Photos, videos, blurry snapshots, and in those pixels were clues hiding in plain sight. Behind the scenes, linguists spent 2,500 hours translating foreign messages and emails, piecing together a psychological profile. Analysts worked through the night, following paper trails, digital footprints, and phone records. And they didn't just identify the bombers, they even tracked down their accomplices. Two friends of Johar Tsarnaev, Diaz Kerebiev and Azamat Shekeov, tried to erase evidence after the bombings, dumping a backpack containing a laptop and fireworks. Another associate, Robel Filipos, lied to federal investigators during a terrorism probe. But as it often does with crimes of this magnitude, justice found its way. Soon, they were all hunted down and charged. A wave of celebrations swept across the media as people rejoiced over the capture of the real villains. The Tsarnaev brothers' capture put the final stamp in proving that Reddit was wrong. For days, the internet had zeroed in on an innocent student, Sunil Tripathi. But the Reddit sleuths struggled to move on from the situation. His family were struggling to come to terms with his disappearance, did not show any resistance, and they were hunted by everyone on the internet who started posting highly offensive messages on their family Facebook page and everywhere else on the internet. After all, these people still have the lynching gene passed over to them by many generations, and it was exhibited last night. Sparked by a single subreddit and fanned by unchecked claims, hearsay, and assumptions, Redditors and countless other social media users had convinced themselves and even the world that Sunil was their guy, but they couldn't have been more wrong. Even public figures like the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir chimed in. In spite of the Sunil Tripathi fiasco, social media users will still believe in a God-given gift to post first and confirm later. But now, there was still one question burning in millions of people's minds. Where was Sunil Tripathi? Realizing the extent of distress that Reddit had caused to Sunil's family, on April 22nd, r/Find Boston Bombers moderator Chris Reeves posted a public apology onto the subreddit. I'd like to extend the deepest apologies to the family of Sunil Tripathi for any part we have played in passing along information that has turned out to be faulty information. We cannot begin to know what you're going through, and we're truly sorry. Several users, Twitter users, and other sources had heard him identified as the suspect. This has not been confirmed. We were mistaken. This event shows exactly why the no personal information until confirmation rule is in place. For the privacy of Sunil and his family, I ask that users here please remove any and all links about him. Thank you. Edit. And for those who might be interested, he linked back to the original subreddit, r/HelpFindSunilTripathi, as if trying to undo the damage. I agree. No detective work, but maybe help spread the state's Facebook page with touching new message. Reddit definitely owes something to the family after what they had to go through the last couple of days. Kami Mattioli, who had tweeted about having studied with Sunil in high school and falsely identifying him as the bomber in the FBI suspect photo, also wrote, I want to issue a formal and public apology to the Tripathi family for my tweet about possible resemblance may have caused. Another user wrote, we all need to look at what happened and make sure that in the future we do everything we can to help and not hinder crisis situations. The same day, Brown University also posted an announcement. A student-led event was planned for the next morning. Lend Your Hand, a campaign where students would gather on the college green, write messages of hope and love on their palms, and share those images online, in hopes that someday, somehow, it might bring Sunil home. Sanjita Tripathi, Sunil's sister, put it simply, this campaign is designed to keep the momentum going, but in a positive way, to advance the search for our missing brother. It was an innocent attempt to rewrite his story, to replace suspicion with compassion. This time, the internet would not be used to tear someone down, but hopefully help bring them home. However, just as the family began to feel a sense of hope in finding Sunil, it was shattered a few hours later. On April 23rd, a rowing team from Brown was paddling through the Providence River. What was supposed to be a regular practice run turned into a heart-wrenching nightmare when they saw someone floating near India Point Park. It was a dead body, cold, still, unrecognizable. It was clear that it had been underwater for weeks. 2 days later, the dental records confirmed what no one could believe. It was him. While the world pointed fingers, he had taken his own life weeks before the bombings even happened. The Tripathi family later confirmed that Sunil had been struggling with depression. It had been a silent weight on his shoulders, one he carried alone until he couldn't anymore. The day he disappeared, he left behind a note that showed his intentions. They released a statement that cut deeper than any headline ever could. As we carry indescribable grief, we also feel incredible gratitude. To each one of you, from our hometown to many distant lands, we extend our thanks for the words of encouragement, for your thoughts, for your hands, for your prayers, and for the love you have so generously shared. But then they said something no parent should ever have to write. A tremendous and painful amount of attention has been cast on our beloved Sunil Tripathi in the past 12 hours. We have known unequivocally all along that neither individual suspected as responsible for the Boston Marathon bombings was Sunil. Despite Redditors admitting to their online witch hunt and sharing multiple apologies, they could never fully compensate for what Sunil's family had to go through. Apologies don't rewind time. They don't erase the impact of an angry mob hurling hateful comments and cruel accusations. Brown University's president, Christina H. Paxson, remembered Sunil not as the face of an internet frenzy, but as the person he really was. Serious, thoughtful, intellectually curious student and a brilliant writer. She further commended him for his exceptional skills in playing the saxophone. But in terms of the real Boston bombers, one question remained. Why would two young men do something so horrible? In the days following Johar's capture, reports revealed the brothers' intentions behind the attack. Johar had scrawled a note on the interior wall of the boat, justifying the bombings as retribution for U.S. military actions in Muslim countries. He referred to the Boston victims as collateral damage, drawing parallels to the casualties of wars abroad. Ultimately, he was convicted for multiple offenses and sentenced to death, a sentence that he has been subject to ongoing legal appeals. What appalled the people of the United States even further was that it seemed as though the Boston bombing as a whole could have been avoided. Tamerlan and Johar Tsarnaev, unsurprisingly, came from a turbulent background. Raised in the fractured Republic of Chechnya, a war-torn region in southern Russia, the brothers had fled with their family and settled in the United States nearly a decade before the bombings. But while Johar seemed to be adjusting as a student on scholarship, Tamerlan was on a different path entirely. In 2011, the Russian government even sent a warning to the FBI, keeping the brothers' concerning backgrounds in view. A warning that, if taken seriously, could have changed the story entirely. The FBI did look into it. They summoned the two brothers for an interview and monitored their activity, but they found nothing, or at least, nothing they could act on. And then, in 2012, Tamerlan went back. He spent 6 months in Dagestan, a volatile region bordering Chechnya. He also spent 2 days in Chechnya itself. When he came back to the US, something was different. He had adopted radical views, and that became evident when 3 people were killed and over 180 were hospitalized. Senator Lindsey Graham demanded to know, why wasn't more done? Why didn't we catch this? He argued that Tamerlan's online activity, his visits to radical websites, should have raised red flags that he was being brainwashed by extremists. Senator Susan Collins further echoed the concern, pointing to cracks not just between agencies, but even within the FBI. But at that moment, none of that mattered to the victims of the bombings, their families, and Sunil's family. The damage was already done. Sunil's story is more than just a footnote in the Boston bombing. It was a reflection of how chaos spreads when a rabid hunger for justice is put above truth. He was falsely accused not by evidence, but by rumors and hearsay, amplified by the careless actions of people who thought they were helping, or perhaps worse, people desperately trying to be a hero out of self-importance. This misinformation catastrophe wasn't just the fault of Reddit threads and viral tweets, though. Traditional news media, the industry which is sometimes seen as a gatekeeper of verified information, played a role as well. In its race to break the story, it published unconfirmed theories as fact time and time again. The Boston bombings didn't just expose the suspects, it exposed how both old and new media can twist the truth when attention is viewed as more important than accuracy. In the end, it's not about which platform is worse, it's about the cost of carelessness, and in this case, that cost was catastrophic. If you found this story eye-opening, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to our channel. It's the best thing you can do to help us keep making more videos, like this one about how the internet hunted down the 2 anonymous Domino's employees who terrorized America with their sickening videos.
Which is exactly what they did for literally an hour straight.
I'll buy you all chips IRL. Okay.
I had to find a way to escape spawn, and soon enough, I got an opportunity that would let me do just that.
Okay, Pentar, are you down to 1v1 with this gear? Hold on.
My brother wanted to 1v1 me in front of all of his friends to prove his strength over me, so they gave
This is what Europeans think America is like. At 8 a.m., I wake up in the clothes that I'll wear for the rest of the day. Then a stranger walks up to me and we overshare about our lives.
Hey, I couldn't drink that stuff. I got diabetes. I'm about to become a father. I'm super afraid. Well, good talking to you.
Everyone is so friendly and polite in America. At 10 a.m., I get all the food I'll eat for the next 2 months. I only buy processed foods. Then I have a quick glass of ice water. And then at 12, it's time for church. It feels awesome to be in the only country that's protected by God. At 1:30 p.m., I send thoughts and prayers for the daily victims of gun violence. Okay, problem solved. After that, I use a free public restroom. I love the large gaps in the stalls so I can check to see if anyone is using them.
Oh, hey buddy, how's it going?
Hey, it could be worse.
That's awesome. See you around.
At 3 p.m., my wife gives birth. We set up a GoFundMe to pay our medical bills. At 3:01, the doctor cuts off the most sensitive part of our baby's penis. He'll thank us for that one day. At 3:02 p.m., my wife is back to work. It's awesome that she was able to get 2 minutes of maternity leave. Her company must really care about her. At 4 p.m., I read the Bible and then go to my favorite corporate coffee shop for a small iced coffee. At 7 p.m., I sit down to watch a movie with my family. There's a nude scene in it. Disgusting. What is this world coming to? We switch to the movie Saving Private Ryan. Finally, a wholesome family film. At 9 p.m., I pledge the allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
Finally, I take 2 shots of Ozempic so I can stay skinny. And that's my day.
A top player cheats his way to fame. A massive YouTuber gets thrown into a bitter drama. The top dog lies for years on end. Today, we'll go over the biggest cheating scandals this game has ever seen.